What's the strangest thing you found in your house after you bought it? I grew up in the middle of nowhere southern Idaho. The farm my folks rented was very odd. There was a ton of old farm equipment from the 40s and 50s, as well as several about 10 old 50s cars just scattered around the property and hidden in the tree line. The owner had a small shed on the property she asked us to never open. No worries. It sat between the garage and an old mobile home trailer that was never used. We moved away, and shortly after the owner died, new property owners went into the shed, found tons of old WWII and older equipment, guns, bayonets, a Nazi flag, all sorts of shit. This shed even had an old school dirt wall basement that had old radios, and tons of other crazy stuff. Unfortunately, after the new owners started messing with the shed, the basement, being dirt and all, eventually gave way and a lot of stuff was damaged. They were able to salvage a lot and sold it, also it worked out. Most I found was a previous tenant's porn stash as a teenager in the old trailer. Best find ever. My house has a 2-person jacuzzi tub with mirrors on 3 walls around it. When I was looking at the house, there was a 4-post canopy bed with a mirror inside the canopy. Needless to say, the previous owner had his thing. When I was moving in, I found in the basement a bar with cuffs on either end hanging from the ceiling, and 2 eye bolts and a board on the floor that would have made this a perfect place to tie someone up spread eagle. I strongly suspect that is what it was used for. I have a room that used to be a bar. Previous owner took the bar itself with him. Despite it being a built-in, it has a drop ceiling and the lights are above with clear panels to let the light through. I was moving ceiling tiles to change a bulb and got hit in the face by what I'm guessing was a homemade sex swing that was bolted to the rafters above. I've been in this house 15 years and I still occasionally find a secret panel in a wall. It seems anywhere there was an extra bit of space, he put a removable panel to make a hidden storage space. And despite all that, the single most surprising thing I found in this house is the light switch in the bathroom that has power going to it but doesn't seem to actually switch anything in the house. What do you go to, you mysterious switch? When will you stop taunting me and give up your secrets? My husband had a car that he bought off a friend. He had it for years and the driver's side window started messing up and getting off track. So we popped the frame off to fix it. In the door frame, we found a handgun and 2 clips wrapped in a white t-shirt. We called the friend he bought it from and turns out that the car was sold to her from a police auction. We have this side room next to some stairs. While we were moving stuff into the room, we noticed a piece of drywall was coming off the wall, so we took it off. Behind it and under the stair were some way old toes, most likely from the 50s. In the same house about a year later, we paid a company to come put new insulation in the attic. When he was done, he told me we had a portion of our attic sealed off. So we busted through, found a super old sewing table and about 15 boxes of pinacones. My dad moved into an apartment and the whole place had its nice original wood flooring from the 1940s except for the living room, which had carpet. Kind of a bummer because the wood looks nicer, oh well. One problem, though. When it's warm out, the living room smells. Can you guess where this is going? My dad decided to investigate and eventually peeled the carpet up to find a large black stain on the subfloor. A black stain so large a person could lie inside of it. The last tenant died and melted in the living room and all they did was pull the hardwood up. Moved into an old house in Berkshire, UK, and found a Bible from the 1700s in the attic. In the back was handwritten the history of the early owners. The church in the village was 12th century and had all the records. So we tracked down the modern descendants and gave them the Bible. Edit. The couple were pretty much speechless when we gave it to them. The dates in the Bible started around 1750, so it was nearly 220 years old at the time we found it. Double edit. I forgot to mention in my original post that we found the family in the same village. Until the early 20th century, people rarely traveled more than 20 miles from their home. I met people in this same village who were 70 years old and had never traveled further than 20 miles from their home. My mom bought her house 12 years ago, but last year my mentally unstable brother kicked the front door down. The door had a giant metal lock on it. It didn't work. We just used the deadbolt but kept the lock on because the house was built in 1795 and looked cool. The lock broke off and a bunch of little papers and cards fell out of it. Among them were CIA ID badges, business cards that had to do with cryptography, and other things that had to do with the CIA. A few days later I thought I would look through the house in search of more CIA stuff, and stumbled upon a wee explosive round under one of the floorboards in the attic. That week was wild. Razor blades. The double-edged ones from the old razors. They were in the wall when we opened it up to repair a busted pipe. I noticed a pile of debris in the wall and luckily happened to be wearing gloves. I reached in to grab the debris and throw it away and pulled out a handful of blades. There were several handfuls. I later learned a feature of the mid-century modern bathroom was a blade disposal slot in the back of the medicine cabinet. Super gross and creepy. Also, if you are going to move a bathroom wall in the MCM house, be on the lookout. Fellow former meth house renter in the years before removing and remediation was legally required to be documented. All exterior and interior door jambs had been fixed and the front, back steel doors had dips in them. From the police door entry battering rams. Cleaning up the vinyl floors, the wash water the weirdest red-brown color, not dirty gray. Only later did I figure out this was probably from the red flares used to cook the meth. In one recipe version, edit, the interior had been repainted and recarpeted but the property exterior was severely overgrown and trashed. Landlord told us prior tenants were not nice. Even with the landlord, interior renovations, we then cleaned vinyl floors and still had to air out the house with open windows for 2 weeks. We thought prior tenants had smoked a lot of pot, but, in retrospect, it was probably the meth residue airing out. Our house had that too. Sort of. Two ground floor bedrooms could be locked from the outside and not unlocked in any way from inside the bedrooms. One bedroom had French doors leading to the yard, and one had a very large window that could be easily used as an entrance, exit. So it's not like they were interested in keeping people locked inside the rooms. More like once there was someone in one of the rooms, they couldn't get into the rest of the house. The bedrooms also had motion detectors wired into the electrical system that would set off an alarm. The disarm panel was by the front door. At the back of a drawer in the kitchen, we also found a copy of a restraining order against a family member that required that person to relinquish all firearms. I have to assume these things were all related. A colorized, colors filled in by hand, very large black and white photograph in an ornate gilded frame, found in the attic. The photo showed a young child in a white lacy dress, wearing a cowboy hat and boots, standing on the steps of a city building, think brownstone, with a pony. The house was in the Midwest, and not near a city where such buildings might be found. It was an old photo, and you could not tell if this was a girl or a boy, since boys used to wear dresses. But what you could tell, and could not be denied, was that the child was the ugliest child any of us had ever seen. Scary ugly. I wasn't even envious about the pony. That kid was just so ugly. We hung the photo in a prominent spot, and would make up a story about the person, pony, photo, taking turns. We left the thing in the attic when we sold the house. Didn't seem right to take it. When I was mad at my parents, I knew that I'd forgive them, and forget why I was ever mad in the first place. In my anger, I conceived this plan to write down why they made me mad on a teeny tiny piece of paper and hide it, so I could rediscover it someday. I hid these little reminders in the wooden slats of my closest door. I'd stuffed them in the little cracks of the baseboard, in between any chipping or peeling paint and the wall. I never discovered any of them. Whatever poor soul that bought the house after I graduated high school got to discover all the causes of my teenage angst. 10 years I've lived in my house, but until recently had never been in the attic. It's a push-up hatch rather than a pull-down ladder combo, so it wasn't very accessible. There was a weird smell one day, and I was afraid something may have passed away up there. So I pulled out a ladder, lifted the hatch and poked my head up there to check it out. Right next to the hatch in the attic was a huge pile of what looked like stuffing that turned out to be a gigantic 6 or 7 foot stuffed person, like the biggest voodoo doll that ever was, but all white. I tried moving it around a bit to get it out of the way. BC it was insanely heavy and hard to move. It's torn in places and full of 100 years of dust, stuffing, and whatever the hell else. So yeah, I just left it there, closed the hatch and called it a day. I found a VHS tape from a defunct rental store in the basement. Someone stashed it away in the wood boards of the ceiling and left it there after moving. Part of me felt I was about to get cursed by the ring ghost but popped it into an old VCR anyways. Started it at a halfway point and found some crazy 80s porn. Couldn't stop laughing at the absurdity of it. It's not as strange, but I also found, next to the Tate, an old schematic map of the house before some of the additions. Interesting, but I feel it's more of a usual thing to find in a house. When I was a teen, my mom worked for a cool little insurance company that was family-owned. When I was 16, the family wanted to expand and asked my mom if she wanted to be the lead for expansion, which basically meant the family bought a small two-bedroom house a few towns over and used the house as a second office. My mom was the only worker in the office for a long time, so I'd often go with her after school and just kinda help file and explore the area. One day I noticed a tiny door inside a closet on the top floor in the unused bedroom, so naturally I went exploring. The door took you through a small crawl space-like tunnel until you suddenly dropped into a small room. The tunnel was like 2 feet from the floor of this room. It was unfinished without drywall or windows, but it had a small wooden spool table thingy, a single stool that looked pretty rickety, a teddy bear that looked fairly new, some kids' toys that very much were not new, a small box I couldn't open, and blank papers just thrown everywhere. The room didn't lead anywhere else and didn't have any other doors. The floor of it was super creaky wooden plank space just far enough for a tiny trickle of light to seep through, but I couldn't tell where the light was or what part of the house the room was built over. I took the teddy bear to show my mom, and her boss ended up letting me keep it. I think I still have it somewhere. I'm not sure what the room was for, but it looked like a kid somewhere along the road made it into a hideaway. It was pretty neat, but super out of place for the fairly remodeled house it was in. I have a painting from a famous Cambodian artist named Nekdeen. It is apparently the first painting he won an award for at an international exhibition, and made his reputation. He later studied at the Disney Studios, returned to Cambodia, and disappeared during the rule of the Khmer Rouge, found in the back closet of a trailer house I bought in 2002. If I had listened to other family members, I would have tossed it, but I liked it. Now, my hope is that it makes it somewhere that Cambodian people who would appreciate it can see it, and not on the wall of some corrupt official. The National Art Museum of Singapore had someone who expressed interest in a purchase, but I lost their email and still am unsure what would be best for the painting, and secondly for me. I was going to put it on some kind of perpetual loan it to the National Gallery of Cambodia, but was advised against that because that organization is only interested in Angkor Wat era art and subject to the whims of connected government officials. I am from multiple generations of poor white trash, and we don't have any experience on how to handle crap that we own that might be of interest to decent folk, and the tax implications of such. I'm not looking to become rich off this painting, nor do I think it can do so for me. I just want to do what is right by the Cambodian people, the unfortunately deceased artist, and myself, as best I possibly can. This painting is a cultural product of Cambodia, and has probably spent the last half-century in American obscurity. Not my house, but I was the one that crawled into the attic and found the booty. My friends bought a house a few years ago and had a holiday housewarming party, ornament decorating station and all. During the party, the friends told us the house had been flipped and that the house flippers had overhauled everything except for the attic, and had told my friends they had found some weird shit in the main house from the original owners, who were hoarders. Friends had not looked in the attic yet because they had no ladder, and frankly didn't have the motivation to because moving. Anyhow, I had had a few drinks by then, and I did have the motivation to, so pulled myself up and into the attic to what I can only describe as a gloriously salacious and cluttered scene. Scores of gay porn magazines, dating back to the 80s, dispersed and piled in layers of glossy copy and broken furniture pieces. Dozens of VHS recordings with handwritten titles were amazing and fucking filthy. A Papasan chair, rug, and a shitty TV and VCR from who knows when. Hooks screwed into beams that ran across the rather low ceiling. Leather straps about wrist size attached. A possible vintage cock strap thingy. Anyhow, I started freaking out from excitement, and another party guest hosted himself up. We picked a few dozen magazines that were in better condition, and started throwing them down the attic opening, along with the leather straps I had found and some choice VHS tapes. The party's ornament decorating station evolved, depending on who you were talking to, into decoupaging dicks onto glass balls, which we hung on their inaugural Christmas tree along with the leather straps. I took home this really interesting, undated softcover volume called The Leatherman's Workbook, which was erotica accompanied by hardcore illustrations and several photo essays. I tried to find the history of it but was unsuccessful. Anyhow, my friend's new house got adequately warmed that night. Okay, this was when we were selling, not buying, but I guess it qualifies for the question. My grandmother had passed away from ovarian cancer several years ago, and we were just getting around to cleaning out her apartment in northern Serbia to sell it off. There was the all-usual Slavic babushka stuff, knitting supplies, weird children's books, communist memorabilia, a piano, birdseed, and the like. It was actually sort of fun getting to experience the history she lived through one last time. But the coolest thing by far was the stash of Austro-Hungarian coins. They were tucked away behind what was previously a seemingly immovable bookshelf. 10 to 15 gleaming gold Forticat coins from 1915, something completely unusual for a former socialist schoolteacher to possess. Thankfully, there was a note with them that explained everything. When Tito's revolutionaries took over Yugoslavia from the Nazis, they tried to reclaim the wealth of their country by going door to door and taking everyone's valuables. In a panic, some families sold off their coins to my great-grandfather, who took the risk to stash them away. Thankfully, he passed inspection and was able to keep the coins. He then went on to live happily ever after as a watchmaker in his village, never spending or even touching the coins again in his life. If either he or my grandmother had been found with them, there would probably be not too good consequences facing them, but they never were. And the cats survived long past the fall of Yugoslavia to that day. When my mother and I were dismantling my grandma's apartment,